thinking about street art, especially in a place like the UAE, how is that something that you define?
I'd say that it's more embellished and it's also treated more as a placemaking project. So there's not much of, how do I say, like a social commentary to it, which is what inherently street art encapsulates, right? But there's a lot of things which are more project oriented, it's more managed, it's more curated to say.
Are there any misconceptions to do with street art specifically in the Gulf that you have noticed?
I, as a curator, I start using the term beautification, it will get picked up, which means that people will start calling it as a beautification project, or it is a term that will be utilized as that. And I want to stray away from that because it is not a beautification project. You're not just calling up an artist and inviting them over to decorate the city. There is meaning to it.
The name No Trespassing, it feels bold. It also feels like a warning. What did you and your team want to convey with that name?
When it comes to the context of street art or graffiti writers in general, there's a lot of accusations in terms of, oh, you're vandalizing our property, or you are the vandalists and don't trespass. So I wanted to kind of turn that switch around, wherein the viewers or the audiences are the ones who are trespassing.
Hello, everyone. This week on Culture Bites, we are talking about street art and street art exhibitions here in the UAE. This is Culture Bites, coming to you from the National News every Thursday. I'm Farah Andrews, and my co-host Inas is still away, but she will be back very soon. So this week, I am joined by the curator of No Trespassing, a street art-focused exhibition that is on show here in Dubai this month. Street art is an expressive form of art that reflects a lot about the city it is housed in and its people. In many cases, it redefines public spaces, perhaps without permission, but always with a statement. And today, we are exploring that intersection. No Trespassing is an exhibition at the Ishara Art Foundation at the Alserkal Avenue in Dubai, running until August 30th and curated by Priyanka Mehra, who I am joined with today. She is here with me in the studio to tell us more about street art and how galleries can be transformed into a dynamic extension of the streets. So, welcome, Priyanka. Welcome to Culture Bites.
Thank you.
Thank you very much for coming and talking to us this week. Let's talk a little bit about kind of street art in general, and then I'd like to chat to you about the exhibition that you have curated more specifically. So thinking about street art, especially in a place like the UAE, how is that something that you define?
Well, first of all, Farah, delighted to be here. Thank you for having us here. How do we define street art in the context of UAE?
Yeah.
It's a difficult question to respond to. If I may, I'd like to backtrack a bit and also kind of go back to the history of street art and not pertaining to how it all started from the US, New York, and most of us know about that, right? Because it started off in the 1960s, there was a lot of subway cars, a lot of a lot of art out on the streets, so on and so forth. But interestingly, there's been a lot of history when it comes to street art in the Arab region also. And it all started with the Arab Spring, Tunisia, Libya, Syria, so on and so forth. And a very interesting thing also happened back in Egypt. It was also quite proclaimed to be the street art capital. So slowly and steadily it seeped into the other counterparts and the regions. And since we're talking about street art in the context of the UAE, I'd say that it's more embellished and it's also treated more as a placemaking project. So there's not much of like a social commentary to it, which is what inherently street art encapsulates, right? But there's a lot of things which are more project oriented. It's more managed. It's more curated to say.
Yeah, so those kind of spaces that we see street art here in the UAE, they're kind of managed, curated, things that have been kind of designed for us to see and enjoy while out and about.
Yes, and speaking of which, by the way, if you've just noticed, I'm sure that you must have noticed, there's an artwork close to the mosque, right outside the building of the studio.
Here at our offices, yeah.
That's something that we did. Back in early 2021. That's when I was working with an organization based in India called XXL Collective. And we were working on this massive placemaking project in Yas Bay, which had about 6 substations and then one arena wall and one retail wall, which is also something that you see where the Etihad arena is.
Amazing.
So, yep.
When you say placemaking, what do you mean for the kind of general listener?
Okay, so a placemaking project is, like I said, it's more managed, it's more curated, it's more public art than a street art. So I honestly, like something that we did back in 2021, I don't consider that as a street art project. It's more of a placemaking project wherein it took us about 1.5 to 2 years to come to a conclusion that what is it that we're also going to be doing over there. So there's a lot of thought put into these projects, and sometimes they also kind of spill over because there are delays in any projects, right? And then the execution on site comes up with its own timeline. So these are what I term to be, call them as placemaking projects, which are pretty much out there in the public realm. And they have like different definitions depending on the how we also utilize them or the interface is.
So is it kind of bringing that kind of vibrancy into a urban space?
Urban space.
Are there any misconceptions to do with street art, specifically in the Gulf, that you have noticed?
So many. So many. I'm trying not to be critical here. However, I'll start off with this one thing wherein it's not a beautification project. Because we do term it as that, and there's nothing wrong with it, I would say, but for people who are working in the art ecosystem, it's also like we're responsible for it also in terms of the kind of keywords that we use, right? So if I, as a curator, I start using the term beautification, it will get picked up, which means that people will start calling it as a beautification project, or it is a term that will be utilized as that. And I want to stray away from that because it is not a beautification project. You're not just calling up an artist and inviting them over to decorate the city. There is meaning to it, and there's a lot of skill that has gone into it for the artists. So the moment that you kind of term it as a beautification project, you're also reducing the worth of an artist and the skills that they come up with.
Okay, that's really interesting. So thinking about that meaning, kind of what are the kind of messages and motifs that you see in the street art in this country and the Gulf, like most frequently, most often, the kind of very prevalent ones?
Some of them are quite abstract in nature also, and I haven't so far seen a particular pattern to it.
Okay.
But definitely there's a lot of it that comes out from the culture and the heritage, and something that the region specifically has cultivated over the years. So there's not particular patterns as such to it.
And so, yeah, there isn't kind of like one message that you see time and time again kind of coming through.
That's an interesting question. I've never thought about that. I do not think I've seen any particular message that has kind of come across every now and then. Because if I talk about, again, like going back to a placemaking project, it's very different, the themes that the government or the development wants to work with, right? So there's no prominent, how do I say, like an identity of it that you keep seeing often.
And I guess a lot of this comes back to kind of who's commissioned it, especially. And I think two of the biggest drives of these commissions are Dubai Tourism and DCT in Abu Dhabi, and that kind of brings it full circle to kind of really what we see from my point of view on the kind of not definitely from your lens, but like kind of beautiful messaging, kind of like the motifs like that are very symbolic of this country, whether they're animals, food and drink, architecture, and we so often see them kind of woven in to the pieces.
That's true. That is true. It also brings me to this point that there are quite interesting state-driven projects like the DMT and the DCT. They're doing some wonderful projects over here, and there is a lot of like intent and aspiration to it.
So I wanted to kind of speak to you about your interest in street art. So kind of where did that begin? How has that grown and kind of become what it is today, where you're creating these projects?
I think it all started off from a couple of years back. I'd say about 6 to 7 years ago, wherein I was and still am in a way like very as a lay person, like I wouldn't say that I'm an expert at it. I'm still learning. There is still a lot of research that is going on at my end, but it all started off by working with this organization called Start India Foundation, and I guess I joined them in 2018 or so. And for the first 2 years, I remember I was just working on getting the projects executed. So I was a project manager over there, and there was no thought into it. Like I wasn't putting any thought or any mind into it. I was just working a lot with street artists until with this project in Yaspe, it kind of changed my perspective a bit. And when I started leading that project, it made me understand the value and the worth of these placemaking projects, and also why it's important that street art evolved to what it is now. Like if you also go back to a bit about like art history, in the context of it, we always kind of think that there's a succession to it. But if you notice that there's something beyond it also, which is outside of it, and it's not confined just to sheltered places like churches or galleries, etc. And that is where street art comes so helpful and as a tool wherein artists, they express themselves.
What parts of the UAE do you notice as like kind of key areas and emerging hubs for street art and public art?
Again, that's a tricky question. I do know for a fact that there's a lot happening in Abu Dhabi. And like I said, that there is intent. There are things that Dubai Culture is also working on. Like there's a prominent area in Dubai in Karama. So that's been done wonderfully. And I guess that was like years ago. I believe Russell Khema is also coming up with a few things in the near future. So it's interesting to note how it's also evolving and how people are noticing it. Because it also is a very ephemeral act, if I may say so, right? So you put art out in the streets and for the public, but then you also kind of see the public is evolving with it.
Do you notice it more on like an emirate by emirate level, or kind of like neighborhood by neighborhood, or is it kind of parallel?
I'd say it's parallel. I don't think it's neighborhood by neighborhood, because rightly what you said, that it's also depending on who is commissioning or who are the people who are commissioning these projects. And each geography is quite different. So it's not like artists can just go out on the streets and create something, you know. But I have noticed a couple of works. I'm not going to be talking about them. But it's nice to notice certain things wherein you see that these weren't like acts of permissions.
Yeah, so that they kind of do crop up from time to time.
Yes, yes.
Which is obviously how street art in its like roots began. It wasn't always something like, obviously now we see it. We see enormous names here in the UAE. We see it internationally, and then when they happen, I think like the most obvious, but like a Banksy, when it happens, it becomes like a thing that is then that quadruples the value of that building.
Yeah.
And now, but this time 30 years ago, that is not the way people were responding to works by that artist.
Precisely. It's also like, I mean, for a Banksy, he's created a benchmark, and it would be very unfair to also assume that, oh, who's the next Banksy in this region?
Yeah.
Because, like I said, like each region works very differently, and it comes with its own policies and many other things to it. But yeah, you've mentioned that pretty well.
So let's talk about the exhibition itself. The name, No Trespassing, it feels bold. It also feels like a warning. What did you and your team want to convey with that name?
Well, first of all, when I started off working on this exhibition, my first and foremost idea was, let's just work with street artists in an institutional space, like in this like white wall space, right? But then I also thought that if I only do that, it's only going to be like a street art show. And do I really want that? I don't think so. Because what are the conversations also that are deriving out of it was the most important aspect for me. And then I started like reaching out to the other artists, such as Sara Alababi, Salma Deb. Salma happened quite later, but like Khalid Asghera, Rami, etc. And then in this whole evolution, or like when it started evolving, I also had these many conversations with all the artists within the show. And I realized that when it comes to art from the streets or even on the streets, there's a lot of claiming of space. There is a lot of mark making. When it comes to the context of street art or graffiti writers in general, there's a lot of accusations in terms of, you're vandalizing our property, or you are the vandalists and don't trespass. So I wanted to kind of turn that switch around, wherein the viewers or the audiences are the ones who are trespassing, and it's not on the artists. And hence, like, No Trespassing as a title came through with all these wonderful 6 artists.
And how, so in your kind of process, you mentioned kind of bringing the street artists in and hand in hand with other artists, how do they kind of, in your experience, respond to kind of like that white wall of just, is it a blank canvas go? Did you have kind of conversations about theme and tone, or was it just a blank canvas?
The theme evolved along with the artists. I was only sure that, I want to do something with the streets and in the context of the streets. And the reason also, one of the reasons why that is because our experiences of the streets have been so different. Where I come from, like in India, streets are so lively. Life happens on the streets and they change from day to night, so on and so forth. Whereas my experience on the streets over here is by looking at it through the car windows. And this is something that I believe Asma Bellamar also covered in one of her shows back in 2023 at Warehouse 421.
Okay.
Any which way, so I realized that there's a lot of like interesting tones to it and interesting notes to it also. And it kind of evolved with my conversations with all these artists. Wherein Sarah's experience of an interface with the street is so different as compared to a Fats Patrol, who's been a street artist and has executed projects all across the world, right? So that's how it started. Coming to your question in terms of, was it a blank canvas for them? Yes, it was. I asked them to go loco with it. Because it was important. Like, if I start controlling them in terms of their thoughts and processes, then we're going back to the model of the institute and galleries and museums. And that's also something that I was very wary of. And like, I was aware that this is not consciously the direction that I want to choose. But interestingly, I did notice that there's a lot of, when you put a street artist into a white cube space, there's a certain change of mindset and a certain change of body language in them. meaning that when I started having a conversation with Fats Patrol and H11235, who are the only street artists in the show, their how do I say, like, their artworks were very different, and I had to have like a proper conversation with them that I don't see the boldness as compared to what I've seen out on the streets.
Oh, interesting.
As compared to a Salma Dib, a Khalid Asghera, Sara Al-Ababi and Rami, who were so confident in bringing in their thoughts and perspectives inside a white cube space. So this was a very interesting transit or a transition to notice also.
Why do you think that was?
It's only because, let's say Fats Patrol and H11, who've been so prominent and confident working out on the streets, right? You suddenly bring them into a white cube space. You have an association of an institute that plays with your mind.
Okay, so it kind of is that, I guess, like a
It's
downscaling.
a constraint. Yeah, the place is constrained. But again, like when you're working out on the streets, you also get random comments, but they're okay with that, as compared to working inside a white cube space, because you also know that you're more in the lens of people.
Oh, that's really interesting. In so kind of working with different artists and kind of bringing the pieces together for this exhibition, is there a kind of thematic message that you have seen kind of run through like a thread in the works, and what would that be? Or are there a few different kind of threads that you've noticed?
Many different threads. There wasn't just one thematic message per se. And like I said, like all of them come with their own interfaces and experiences of the streets. For example, Salma works with the idea of what you see and what you cannot see. It's because of her own experience of visiting the refugee camps in Syria. So she picked that up in her practice. Khalid has wonderfully spoken about the erasures of the space that takes place, wherein you're not acknowledging what was the history in the past, and you're kind of working, because the cities are also working so rapidly in terms of the developments, right? So you're not even acknowledging, and you don't even know sometimes that what was the history of that particular location. Then Sarah's talking about walking as a methodology and what she notices and the lines of invisible and the visible when it comes to identities. And she's wonderfully worked with concrete and light as an element. Fats has her own storytelling going on, wherein she's picked up the abandoned objects from the streets and given them a new life, whereas there's also like this whole space, the white wall or a white cube space that she's had like a marks and brush strokes over it, and then picked out like stories from it. So there's a lot of like expression and imagination going on in her side of the space. Whereas Rami is interestingly speaking about the ownership of a space and an institute, and what kind of deciphers and who owns the space, right? And then again, H11, interestingly, there are many layers to it, and he's worked on an abstract piece. And because he could not visit in person over here, so we had to execute that project for him.
Oh, okay.
So there's multiple notes about authorship, and also how then, how do you say, like, borders start defining the artworks also sometimes.
Whereabouts is he based?
Nepal.
Ah, okay. And so then just finally, for you and the places that you get inspiration from here in the UAE and internationally, like what are the kind of art spaces, be it institutions, be it galleries, or like cities and their street art, urban art, like where have you found inspiration from in like the last few months this year?
Out on the streets.
Out on the streets?
Absolutely.
In day-to-day life, or kind of looking at the emerging works that you're seeing?
The inspiration?
Yeah.
100% out on the streets, because a lot of my, like personally for me, a lot of my thinking process goes during my walks. And even in a weather such as right now. So there is like a lot of conscious effort that goes into it to just step out and just like take a walk. And because Ishara is also located in such a wonderful place such as the Alserkal Avenue, right? So it allows us to just step out and take a walk.
Yeah, I mean, the walks around Alserkal are, it's difficult not to feel inspired as you're walking around and seeing so many different galleries, and there's like a lot around all the time. It's a very vibrant part of Dubai.
And I do listen to Culture Bites when I'm out on these walks.
Oh, thank you so much. That's lovely to hear. Well, thank you so much for joining us. Just as a reminder, the exhibition No Trespassing is running until August the 30th. That's right?
Yes, that's true.
So people can go and check it out.
Yes,
There's
please.
still time.
There's an invitation to trespass.
Trespassing allowed.
Yes.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, Farah.
And that is it for today. If you have enjoyed this episode, please subscribe on your favourite podcasting app, follow us on Instagram at The National Arts, and subscribe over on our YouTube channel. I'll be back next week when I'll be back with Inas. Until then, bye-bye.